Hello, Roger Royce, 10,000 Startups Podcast, the Angel Capital Association Model Convertible Promissory Note. So the ACA has just now in June 2024 released its Model Convertible Promissory Note. Now, you may know, if you know, do anything in startups, that pretty much the standard, at least on the West Coast and East Coast, is to use SAFE, Simple Agreements for Future Equity, or simple agreements for future financings, I guess they call it, which is basically somewhat of a glorified prepaid forward contract. And that really has become the standard, but still out in the rest of the country, and even in startups in any city, really, once in a while you'll run across a convertible note. Now, what's the difference? So if you've listened to my podcast before, then you know that the difference is that a convertible promissory note is the investor lends money to the company, which bears interest, has a fixed repayment date, but then converts into equity when the company does its first qualified financing, which is basically a major priced round of a certain size. The SAFE came along because everybody kind of understood that investors weren't bargaining for interest, so who cares about that? And they also did not expect to get repaid because the company, either it was going to convert in the financing or there'd be no financing and there would be no money to repay the investor. So why bother engaging in this fiction that we've got a repayment obligation when no one expects to get repaid and isn't pricing it like they're getting an interest rate return. And it created regulatory issues as well under state laws, especially here in California where we have banking regulations. So, along comes the SAFE. And the only thing really novel about it in my mind is that it had a cute name, because I've been doing warrants for 20 years, probably longer, 30 years, just calling them something different for sophisticated investors who wanted to do something more tailored. But anyway, now we've got a standardized document, SAFE, which is basically a convertible note without interest and without a fixed repayment obligation. It just hangs out there until something happens. Company finances or gets sold or something like that. Okay, well, the National Venture Capital Association, they've got really good forms for priced rounds, preferred stock agreements. You can find good forms out there for Series Seed, for pre-seed priced rounds, preferred stock, watered down Series A or pre-seed preferred stock. You can find really good forms out there. Well, I don't know if they're good, but you can find forms that everybody uses for SAFEs that are available online and widely available, and everybody knows and understands them, even though a lot of lawyers like me don't really like them because of the way some of the nuances. But really no really good form of standardized convertible note until now. Now we got the Angel Capital Association has come up with a note and a really extensive term sheet for the note. I mean, that's a little unusual. I mean, more unusual than not to actually have a term sheet for a note, but I have done it. But now we've got a very extensive term sheet with annotations. Like, holy cow, the term sheet's almost as long as a note, it looks like, about half as long. Anyhow, let me tell you about the note. So if I'm investor counsel, I much prefer a convertible note. Why wouldn't you? You get interest, you get a fixed repayment date. If the company doesn't do a financing and doesn't repay the note at that fixed repayment date, well, they're in default and you, the investor, can sue them and maybe take their company away. And that is not just purely theoretical. I have been on both sides of that. That actually can and does happen, even though we always say in public forum that, oh, nobody's going to worry about it. Who wants to worry about picking the meat off the bones at that point? Well, let me tell you something. Some investors will do that. So it makes me nervous on the company side. So we always prefer a SAFE. And it's like I said, the market has gotten to where investors understand that, and maybe they don't really care. They don't want your company if you're not going to be there. So they'll go along with the SAFE too. And then the issue is just economics. Is it a pre-money SAFE? Is it a post-money SAFE? And a couple of other things. Well, you can watch my SAFE video or listen to the SAFE podcast and kind of go through all those variables. Let me tell you what the note says. So convertible note, subject to a convertible note purchase agreement typically. I just have the form of note. And of course, it provides for an interest rate, provides that it's not repayable. That makes sense. The very first issue is in fully diluted capitalization. If you've listened to my SAFE podcast, you'll know that there is a company favorable pre-money form of SAFE and an investor favorable post-money form of SAFE. Well, this form has a little bracket or an asterisk and says, you know what, you can decide in the document, in the definitions. So they sort of leave that open. It's a post-money note, but with the option of adding some language to make it pre-money. Couple of other interesting things. It converts on a qualified financing, and the purchase price is going to be the lesser of the discount rate. So you're going to get a discount. You get your money in earlier, so you get a discount to the price that the priced round investor pays since you got in early, and you get rewarded for that, or the lesser of the amount that you would get pursuant to a valuation cap. So interesting point number one, that's baked into the document. You get the better of those two. And that actually is pretty much market for safes. You always see both of those things, even though theoretically people talk about doing one or the other or neither, but almost always I would see both of those. So not really a big deal. There's a lot of safe concepts built into this note. There is the concept of a shadow preferred, right? If you're getting in at a discount, so you're getting the stock for 80 cents a share when the new money investors are paying $1 a share. Well, your liquidation preference shouldn't be 80 cents a share, or shouldn't be $1 a share. It should be 80 cents a share. And that, by the way, trickles through a bunch of provisions in the preferred stock because it determines some other dividend rights, for example, not that it matters, and other conversion rights. What else? Sale of the company. This is kind of interesting. It's a very well thought through document. I'll give them that. You know, they did kind of think of everything in this. There is a little bit of ambiguous language that, you know, we can play with, but overall, I like the part about how if there's a sale of the company, you know, I will struggle with this. Well, what are we going to put in a note? Do you get 2 or 3 times your money back? That's a multiplier. Or do we just pretend that you convert it to common at the valuation cap? Well, this note says you get the greater of those two. So, big surprise. The Angel Capital Association has an investor favorable term. So just keep that in mind. It's a relatively I'd say it's a fair document, but the nuances are investor favorable. And what a sophisticated investor would probably ask for. For example, on top of the discount and the valuation cap, there's an MFN, a most favored nations clause. And that is pretty much exactly what it sounds like, that if you go do a deal after this one, you're going to give the investor the option to take that deal instead of the one he negotiated. So if you do a better deal, they get the better deal. I actually like those in my documents because it takes a lot of the pressure out of it. Because, you know, these agreements are supposed to be, you know, fast, cheap, and easy. And they're not if you're negotiating hard because you think you're dialed in, tied in, and you want to get the best deal you can. But if you know if you got an MFN, you can lighten up a little bit, because if it turns out you are overpaying, well, you're going to find out in the next note, and you'll get the benefit of that. Now, there are a couple things though that I don't typically see in safes or notes, maybe inside letters once in a while, if I'm representing an investor. For example, protective provisions. This note has those baked in. It's just a handful, and it's big stuff. It's what you'd expect to give a pre-seed investor or a seed investor. We talked about MFN, the board observer. At least they're not asking for a board seat, but they are asking for a board observer. Not really a big deal. I'd probably give them that. It's good to start imposing discipline on the company anyhow. One thing I do want to point out that nobody wants to talk about, but one last thing about the note, and I love this. They attach a little accredited investor questionnaire to the back. And that's something we all just, you know, everybody wants to just kind of skate past that without really giving it a lot of thought, because, I mean, yeah, everybody, I think, you know, my babysitter's accredited, right? Well, I don't have a babysitter, but if I had one, she'd be accredited because it's a relatively low standard these days. given the given the current inflation that we have. Let me just leave it at that. So we've got it, so nobody really worries too much about it. We just have a rep that they're accredited. The standard is you have to reasonably believe that your investor's accredited, and this attaches a short questionnaire. I like that. Now, here's the thing no one wants to talk about that I want to talk about. A safe, the investors, at least here in Silicon Valley, more often than not, will take the position that the safe that they've signed is stock for tax purposes. In fact, there is one form of note out there with this goofy provision in it that I laugh about it, but then I've used it too because, like, let's see if we get away with it. That says, by the way, we all intend this safe to be stock, as if our intent means anything to the IRS. Well, why are they doing that? Because if you do that, if it's stock, your holding period for qualified small business stock purposes starts when you acquire it. So you hold the safe for 2 years, you convert it into financing, and then you sell after 3 years later. You say, I got a 5-year holding period. I don't have to pay any federal tax because I got QSBS. Okay, maybe you'll win on that, maybe not. Not going to comment on that. I will just tell you that people like to take that position. Can't take that position with a convertible promissory note. Pretty hard to say that this is stock and not a note when it says note right on the first page. So that is one disadvantage to this, to even the investor. And this form of note doesn't even go there, doesn't even try to address that as it should. That'd be just a little too cute. But other than that, I like it. I think it's a great form. I'm glad. I hope it becomes a standard. We have a standard we can all work from. It's a little more investor favorable than I would like, being company counsel, but overall a fair document. Like I say, what you would expect a sophisticated investor to ask for. So, congratulations, Angel Capital Association. Roger Royce, 10,000 Startups. Thanks for listening.